All right, everyone. Thanks for joining me today on some Cereal for Dinner podcast. I almost said the wrong name of the podcast because I'm used to seeing you on other venues. But some Cereal for Dinner podcast. My friend Jason Coral. Today, as always, going to be another interesting conversation about growing up Generation X. How you doing, Jason?
I am awesome. It's great to be here, and it's great to be talking about the old times, right?
Right, right,
Yeah.
right. So this show is all about growing up Generation X and what kind of influenced me, and hopefully by extension, what influenced other people who are listening. And of course, it's one of those things. It's like not everybody's going to be interested in everything I'm interested in or you're interested in, believe it or not. but
Losers.
yeah, uh, but one of the things that really kind of shaped my life, and I know your life as well, is the movies that we watched as we were growing up, and the genre of movies that I wanted to talk with you about because we're both avid martial artists is the martial arts movies that we grew up on. Now I have to ask you a question first, straight out of the gate. How old were you? How old were you when Karate Kid came out?
14.
You were 14. Now,
Yes.
now when Karate Kid came out, did did you after Karate Kid came out try to improve your martial arts skills by washing things with the wax on, wax off?
Thank goodness. No. No. Thought it was hokey and bad then. And now the funny thing is, I teach when I'm teaching Wing Chun. I'm explaining to people that's kind of what we're doing. You're learning how to
Yeah.
fight through this. Yeah. So, you know, kind of
You
goes
didn't
around. Yeah, it kind of goes around.
you didn't do that, huh? I did. I was I was the hugest Karate Kid geek. Now I have to say that like I got interested in martial arts at a pretty early age, but kind of went up and down, kind of
Mhm.
but one of the things that revived my interest in martial arts as I was a kid, because I was 10 when it came out, um,
Mhm.
10 or 11, something like that.
You're a
Um,
baby.
oh yeah, let's see, was two movies that I know that we can both talk about, and that was The Karate Kid and The Last Dragon.
Yes, Last Dragon, the greatest bad movie of all time. It was bad, so bad it was good,
what
and
were
it had Denise Matthews Vanity in it, who
uh-huh.
I was 14, going on 15, and I had a serious crush on her. I must have watched that movie. Oh, jeez. I haven't seen a movie in 30 years. I can still remember lines from the movie. That goes to show you, I probably damaged my my growing up, and certainly my maturity was probably hindered and prevented in some ways by just overwatching. Let your pizza, direct your pizza to Daddy Green's Pizza, and all of that
Yeah,
stuff. So many great dumb lines in that film.
yeah, that was a great movie. It really revived my. This is going to sound crazy, but I was so into martial arts films that I was going to create this. So silly. I was going to create my own martial arts style at one time, and this is what I was going to do. I was going to, like, as a beginner, you wore a karate. Well, at the very beginning, like if you were a beginner, you wore a karate gi. And if you were intermediate, you wore a kung fu suit. And if you were advanced, you wore a ninja suit.
There you go. I was half thinking that you did with that tracksuit advance. Okay,
Oh,
all right, that's not bad.
uh,
That's still pretty
no.
creative.
So, what do you recall about growing up watching martial arts shows?
that, that, as I said, I think I wasted a good part of my childhood. you know, I mean, well, I watched a lot of kung fu movies. I remember watching Cannonball Run because Jackie Chan was in
Yeah,
it,
I
and
remember
things like
that too.
it was just if a martial arts star was in it, then I was going to watch the film and I was going to
Mm.
watch and dissect everything he did, and I was just obsessed with it. And um, it's fun. Let's go. I have a couple of comments on Last Dragon.
Okay, go ahead.
First and foremost, that Bruce Lee wave that was the '80s. I don't think anyone listening today can understand how big Bruce was in the 80s and how much his persona and it's just the just shadow he cast, how far and wide that went. It was ubiquitous. And that movie, what we have, what was his name?
Leroy Green.
Bruce
Bruce Leroy.
Yeah, Bruce Leroy. And I still remember Bruce Leroy, and Shogun of Harlem was really the MMA fighter of his time. That didn't matter about his character; it just mattered about his fighting skill. And so the movie had some great moral points of that the martial artist should be a great man and a great fighter. The two were never separated; they were never antithetical. And Shogun of Harlem it was antithetical. He was a good fighter, but he was a terrible person. And you see that today, where it doesn't matter what kind of person you are. Just take a look at Conor McGregor, and the number of run-ins with the law. And I'm not saying all MMA fighters are terrible people. I'm just saying that doesn't matter what their character is. I know people are going to get mad at me, but as a 14-year-old, you're still impressionable, and you could leave me in front of the TV and let me watch that film where there's some sexual innuendo, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the Vanity or Laura Charles, I still remember her name in the movie. I mean, I was just in love with her, and it was just a sweet, stupid, hokey romance in the middle of this martial arts mayhem. And everybody, Eddie Arkadian, all of them should have gotten Oscars for overacting. And it was just a awesome orgy of stupidity and hijinks and he's got the game with that tracksuit on. He's got cultural appropriation to the nth degree.
Right.
This guy, and so many funny lines. And the great thing about that movie is it didn't take itself seriously. So it kind of had that, and his little brother's kind of poking fun at him the whole time, like you're a walking fortune cookie. And so the movie was funny, whereas Karate Kid was more serious. Karate Kid was making the point that Cobra Kai was bad. Just trying to learn how to fight for its own sake was bad. And I think there were still moral lessons that you could get from Hollywood, that discipline and commitment and caring about others was the path to strength. And so I know I just hijacked that, but I thought, growing up and looking at that, but Bruce Lee was huge. And even Bloodsport 4 years later, that came out in '88, I think. John Van Damme is actually doing a bunch of tricks that Bruce Lee was reputed to have done in his career. And so even that was, even though it was supposed to be this Frank Dukes thing, Bruce was going to have Bolo in it, right? From Enter the Dragon. And so it was like the public consciousness of what martial arts mastery was very much riding on our perception of Bruce Lee. So that's the thing I remember the most, was just you compared everything to Bruce Lee.
Do you think that prior to you're right, prior to like what you were saying about Karate Kid, about the integrity of the martial artist, do you think prior to that movie you had a lot of that, or do you think that it was pretty much all about fighting, as you recall earlier movies? So for me, earlier movies of martial arts really, like, I really don't remember them too well, because I was, although I was into martial arts, I was more,
there were a lot of them.
Yeah, but they were all like kind of kung fu movies and things like that. There really wasn't this epic tale, told through martial arts. There was really a couple of kind of defining movies about that. I'm going off there. I want to get into that in a minute, but what do you think about the movies prior to the Karate Kid? What were some of those? I'm just trying to rack my mind to think about some of them. Of course, you had all the Bruce Lee stuff.
Yeah, well, you had like early '80s. You had Octagon, which not about MMA. With Chuck Norris, you had the Big Brawl, which was supposed to bring Jackie Chan over, but he used Robert Klaus, who was the director of Enter the Dragon, and they tried to Bruce Lee Jackie Chan, and that wasn't who Jackie was, and so Jackie goes back to Hong Kong, and he goes and develops his brand of this almost slapstick type of martial arts comedy. And I think that Force One or Force of One with Chuck Norris and Bill Superfoot Wallace.
Right.
You had that. You had another one with Joe Louis in it. Forget what the name of that was.
I
Somebody
think
probably could.
it's kind of one of those things like martial arts movies probably up until Karate Kid, I would say, and I'm trying to think of a movie beyond that, but Karate Kid and also the movie Best of the Best. Really, you're really watching it for the martial arts.
Hmm.
Like the storyline is almost not incidental. I mean,
Yeah,
it's just like
you just wanted it to not offend your intelligence too bad. Yeah,
yeah, you just
it's a
kind of wanted to
holy family.
look at, yeah, I think so too. But then when you get to, but I do like what you're saying about the Last Dragon as well. I think maybe there's some of that in there too, where you actually have this idea of the martial artist. It's not just martial art; it's the
Right.
martial artist
You
who is
can't
the
you can't go. And I have another a Wing Chun book rolling, should be out next week on
okay.
Silam Tao. And the last chapter, I threw it in there. The last chapter is on the First Hit Man movie. Now I know I'm shooting ahead to 2008, but I said that in America we can't conceive of a hero. But we have the Avengers. The power came to them, right?
Yeah,
Whereas the martial arts, a classic martial arts film, is you get the power by discipline, right? It's the paradoxical truth. I mean, all Christian truth is paradoxical in that case. And the I'm going to submit to discipline to gain freedom. You know that we're
right.
dieted. I mean, I talk to people who are horribly ensconced in moral relativism and hypersubjectivism, and they're ardently against any type of there's an objective moral truth. But they know that if they're going to be in shape, they have to discipline themselves. They get freedom by not eating everything, right? And
Right,
so that truth. So
right, yeah.
the martial art truth of that is that if one is going to have true mastery, one must master themselves. One can't
Hmm.
just be a fighter. That's destruction. One must be an artist, and I think that's where the Bruce Lee issue would come from. He took an artist of life, and so the Last Dragon, you see this main character who is strong because he's good. His goodness and his strength go hand in hand. And
Hmm.
what a message that is to send a 14-year-old and 11-year-old. You need to tell each generation that anew. And that's what I lament the most about what we're doing with a contemporary life. You go back to the 80s and I laugh at Eddie Arcadian and the overacting and the massively bad wardrobe and all of that
Uh-huh.
stuff. But all of that, you look back, you don't notice it at the time because that's just a culture. But the one thing you're getting at is the moral truth that's running through it is that human beings, if they seek power and prestige and wealth and so forth on their own terms, rather than becoming good people as the primary, you're going to have a problem. You get Shogun of Harlem. That would be the message I would take about that is to be strong, one must be good. See, the good guy wins.
Hmm.
In Karate Kid, you get the same thing. The good guy wins,
Right, yes.
right? And
Yeah.
that's an
Well,
important lesson. And so that was a way to teach young, dumb, competitive young men, that were always running around fighting. That it wasn't just about physical strength.
yeah. Well, one of the things too that goes with that um, is the idea that the journey is worth it, that there's something at the end of it that makes it worth it.
Yeah,
It isn't, it's, you're going through all this self introspection and this discipline of painting the fence and things like that. And the things that you don't even understand at the time, like Daniel LaRusso in The Karate Kid. I mean, he's
mm,
basically giving his trust over to this guy so he can learn karate. And this guy's making him wax his car and sand his floors and paint the fence, and you don't know, you're like, what is going on? Why am I doing all this stuff? And then
right.
finally at the end there's a payoff. There's an actual reward to the discipline, even if we don't understand the discipline at the time. And I think
It,
that's another moral lesson too,
yeah,
because you don't always understand the payoff that's going to happen. Even when you're going through it, you don't always understand that payoff. I think there's a sermon in there somewhere.
hey, it's a Marshall version of Pilgrim's Progress, isn't it?
Yeah,
It
for
is.
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean that's really what you keep seeing, the same story told over and over again in that way.
Yeah. So do you think it was right for Mr. Miyagi to not let Daniel LaRusso know what he was doing? And has
I
that
don't teach that
affected?
way.
You
I don't
don't
teach
teach
that
it.
way. No,
No,
I'm
okay.
always trying to tell people what they're doing it for. Because I think that,
Okay.
you know, I'm always trying to say, this is what this is pointing to. You have to submit to the discipline and put the time in, and this is what you'll get. So I'm always telling
Yeah.
them that, because I think that's a biblical model for it, is you're telling them what's coming. They have to submit to it. They have to
Right.
believe in it and have faith in it. But the person, I try to show the utmost respect to somebody. And I think Miyagi, I mean, that's the classic thing. Trust your sensei, trust your sifu. And of course, that's rife with all sorts of abuse in and of itself, right? So you have a serious
Right.
problem.
Right.
So that Miyagi becomes almost a Christ-like character in that regard. And so I got kind of I wouldn't do it
Well,
because
there's a
I don't
reason.
trust myself that much.
Well, there's a reason why a lot of martial arts schools, they and not necessarily styles, but schools within styles for sure get a little cultic, where
That's
it's all centered
trust
around the teacher and all that stuff.
style and teacher. Yeah, style and teacher. I say all the time, what does it matter if, and I just did a self-defense seminar yesterday with some 30 young impressionable college kids. And it's amazing as I get older how young college kids look to me now.
Oh yeah, yeah, they're
But
babies.
I know. And what's funny is I was telling you need to do this. It doesn't matter if you went to his martial arts school and the instructor was awesome. Who cares? What can you do? And I think that would be the strong message of, that relationship though of Daniel and Miyagi is one of that disciple, right? Servant
Hmm.
leadership, and it's refreshing because even and we're talking on the other side of Kurbakai,
Yeah,
right?
right. Yeah,
And
for
and you
sure.
see, and I like the fact that you can see the different trajectory that Daniel's life took and Johnny's life took when you had different types of leaders.
Oh man,
Yeah.
that's certainly true. So so did you look for that leadership when you were a kid? I mean, did you
Hmm.
kind of look for that in martial arts specifically when did that influence you towards a particular sifu or anything like that when you
Amen.
were?
Amen. Absolutely. And I kept getting my heart broken in a way. I
Oh
think
no.
I think it did because I'm not going to name names, but you go into Jeet Kune Do, Wing Chun, and you find out that some of these people are just extraordinarily flawed people, and that's a tough thing because I'd set up like an idol up there that this guy, I'm going to go train with this guy, and I'm going to get certified, and I'm going to do this, that, and the other thing, and I'll tell you, within Jeet Kune Do especially, I saw a lot of Cobra Kai, that mentality of
Yeah.
let's just learn to fight. They would talk about the philosophy, they would talk about things, but it was just about how good the instructor was, and people were vying to to step over each other to get certified, and literally fights were breaking out in training sessions, and yeah,
Wow.
right, oh yeah. I mean, I started in the '80s with I the Paul Vunak circus. I would throw one name in there, and that wasn't a healthy environment.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
just say that was not
Well,
a healthy environment.
right, right, right. Which is kind of interesting because me for like I grew up, especially my early years doing just traditional martial arts like Ishinryu and some Taekwondo and stuff. So it was always that aspect wasn't. I wasn't until later that I got into JKD that people were like, no, where this is really more about fighting than it is about anything else.
Right.
So that was ingrained in me.
And
But I was looking for that kind of meant that I was
yeah,
looking for that Mr. Miyagi, that
yeah,
affected me. When
it did.
you look at somebody like Mr. Miyagi, you're thinking, I want that in my life as a martial artist.
Hmm.
So,
Because you
do
want
you,
the strong man to be the good man.
yeah,
That's
that's a
that's
good point.
that's an essential part of human life. Peggy Noonan, Reagan's speechwriter, she had said that all kids, I always remember this line, she said that all children need two things. They need unconditional love and they
Uh-huh.
need loving discipline. And
Mm.
if they don't get both, they grow up terrified. And then for young men, by the time they're 13 or 14, that terror turns into bitterness and turns into rage. And that's why I think martial arts and good martial art leaders are so essential to maintain the social fabric of any society. What do you see in the cities? Raging through the cities, you see people who have not had loving discipline.
Right.
You know, I
Right.
mean,
Exactly.
right, they have not had loving discipline, and you can just tell by the way people conduct themselves online. Like you're saying that to people. I mean, let's go back to Miyagi and Daniel. Can you imagine Daniel saying some of the things about Cobra Kai in front of Miyagi that you see routinely on Jeet Kune Do or Wing Chun forms or something? Miyagi would tell Daniel he's wrong, right? But
Yeah.
and they haven't learned respect, and I think that's a critical element of martial arts, which is why Karate Kid is a great movie, a great martial art movie,
Yeah.
and because it shows martial art, or you
Right.
say best of the best. It shows even blood sport. The Van Damme character, his respect for his sensei and his code directs him throughout the movie. So the movie is terrible in so many ways, but
Uh-huh. Well,
but it continues to show the
one
theme.
lesson, one lesson though that we can learn from, even though we can't learn it from Frank Dukes, but we can learn it from Bloodsport, is that martial arts can influence your life in a positive way. Because
Yeah,
what happens at the very
for
beginning of the
me,
movie,
mhm.
at the very beginning of the movie, he's
He's
caught stealing.
hmm
And then so they say, okay, you're gonna, to pay this off, you're going to,
right.
be my son's dummy, basically, and my
Pizza
workout
company.
partner.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's one of
hmm
the lessons that we learned from martial arts movies. Now, okay, let's get back to Karate Kid for just a second, and maybe a little bit more geek out on the movie a bit. So let's talk about the differences between Karate Kid Part One, because I want to get to ninja movies eventually, but I want to talk about karate movies for the most part. Well, I mean, for right now, I kind of want to stick on the geek part. So you have Part One, which was Daniel's story, right? And then you have Part Two, which was kind
This
of
is
more Miyagi's
Miyagi
story.
story.
And then you have Part Three, which was a big turd, as far as I'm concerned. So out of
World. Yeah. Well
out of the
said.
out of the three, what did you which ones did you like? Which one did you like the best?
Well, the first one's classic.
Yeah.
The first one has so many great themes in it of the outsider coming in and feeling out of place and the pugnaciousness. Now, like you see this stuff today about Cobra Kai and how Daniel. Have you seen the video on YouTube about how Daniel was really the aggressor?
Yeah.
And but um and it's funny though that is Daniel without having a father present, right? He's moving into a new town. His mom, he's got this New Jersey thing going on, and it's brand new. And he's making mistakes because he's a kid trying to live in
Hmm.
in a world and trying to make his way. And so I think that resonates the most. You go to Okinawa, and that was harder to connect to for the average American kid. So I think that the first one was just a classic in terms of, and the second one had classic themes too. But I think
Yeah.
really the first one, especially him coming in as a kid, if you're 13, 14, 15 years old, you know what it's like to step into a new school.
Yeah. Right.
You know what it's like to have bigger kids there and not know anybody and not know what's down that hall. And so I think you can, that the people watching that the audience was directed to all understood Daniel really,
Yeah.
really well.
Right.
And so,
Yeah.
whereas the second one, it was a great movie, but it was more abstract for most of us.
Did you identify with Daniel Moore, or did you identify with Leroy Green?
That's a terrible question to ask me on a being recorded. I, I was, I am
I'm
going to
just kidding.
embarrass
You
myself
don't have to
royally.
answer. What?
I'm going to embarrass myself royally and say I would probably have identified more with Leroy Green because I was the doofus that was going off to meditate and pray and so forth and so on.
Uh-huh.
Daniel was an idiot as far as I was concerned. He wasn't a very deep thinker, and I
Right.
I don't think I was as hokey as Leroy Green.
Well, let's
But
talk about this for a second. Let's talk about the difference in the character type between Daniel LaRusso and Leroy Green, because it's kind of interesting. Because in Daniel LaRusso, you have somebody who is his kind of his own person, and he wants to. Um,
he accidentally becomes
he
involved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he wants to, I mean, he wants to learn martial arts, but he kind of wants to be his own person. He's like, you know, at the very end, he finally gets fed up with Miyagi and he's like, I'm going to get out of here. And here, all I've learned to do is wash your cars and all this stuff before the final reveal comes out. And you're going, whoa, he's actually learning karate here. But on the other hand, you've got this other character, Bruce Leroy, who doesn't want to let go. His teacher basically has to kick him out and has to send him on these crazy missions, you know, and stuff, and say, and you know,
And get the
and
glow.
yeah, and get the glow, and he's trying his best to imitate Bruce Lee. You know, you have both those kind of characters in martial arts, and you
Right.
have both those kind of
Right.
characters in life in
Right.
general too. You know what I mean? I mean, it affects us. The reason why we like, you know, this movie is because we identify in some way with it, and then the reason why we like this movie is because we identify
Hmm.
in some way with it. You know, so I mean, I just think it's kind of interesting how you see those two characters, and I definitely have been both at different times. Um, you know, I've been the person who's like, don't want to leave the nest, you know, whatever. But I've also been the person who's just like, no, I finally need to get rid of all the BS and become my own person, become my own martial artist.
Hmm.
Um, anyway, I thought I'd riff on that for a second. It was just a thought that occurred to me. Um, but do you find yourself, so when we're looking at martial arts movies, the lessons that were learned, do you find yourself now that you're older? And I find myself becoming this more and more. I start identifying with Miyagi way more than I identify with Daniel at this point in my life. Don't
Oh
know
yeah.
if you think that. Yeah,
I agree.
yeah.
I agree with that
Is
completely.
isn't that weird? Like when you're a kid, you do identify with that, but now that you're a martial arts instructor, when you've been a martial arts instructor for so long, I go back and I watch that movie and I'm like, oh gosh, if this kid could just get it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If this could just happen, I
Yeah.
find myself becoming the mentor rather uh, than you know, the student more or less, although I'm still a student, you know, we're always
Hmm.
still a student. Yeah. All right, well, one more martial arts movie I want to talk about. Well, is there another martial arts movie you want to talk about, or did you want to say something about that?
No, but we haven't mentioned Vanity in about 20 minutes now. So
Oh,
because
okay, all
that
right.
was a heartbreaking part about Last Dragon. I'm like, you know, he's like, she comes in and wants to be his buddy, and his side, forget his name, you know, the one who said he had mastered the art of fighting without fighting,
Oh,
and
yeah,
he said, well,
yeah.
I mastered the art of fighting, I don't know how to fight, and
Johnny.
you
No, it's
know,
not. Is it John? No, it's not Johnny.
I
I can't
forgot it.
remember.
And when he showed John, I think it was Johnny, and he comes in when Laura Charles is in there asking him to be her bodyguard, you know,
Oh,
somebody to
yeah.
guard my body, and she's turning her down flat. He's completely oblivious, and Johnny recognizes who she is, and that scene just is so funny. And like I said, there's an innocence of it, in it, and the movie worked because it didn't take itself too seriously, and
Right,
you know, it was just a charming, fun, breezy, you know, not very deep film about something that hooked into something deeper within you. And you know, Karate Kid was a more serious movie in that regard, as far as it goes. But I think you're right. It's funny how you can change your perception of it as you get older and think, man, you know, the youthful passions that run amok. That's what you need martial art discipline to save you from.
right, right.
But okay, another movie around that period, that that was, I'll let you go off of this one. But you had Karate Kid in '84, right? And
Hmm.
you had, um, of course, you had Last Dragon '84, and Last Dragons just fell off the cliff. I mean, that's just culturally that was really big for a long while. But Karate Kid's the one that resonates. Karate Kid gets the sequels and
Right.
and and all of that stuff. The another movie that I was rather surprised with, and I do not remember the name. I was going to ask you. Remember John Glenn? Remember he played the FBI agent in that was in charge in Silence of the Lambs, and he plays a karate student. He goes into and learn karate, and that was right around that time. I forget his name. I forget what the name of the movie was. I couldn't find it.
I
But
don't know.
there was a lot of movies, and it was about that same theme. This theme was, again, like there's a lot of westerns in the 60s and 70s, and then the
Yeah.
westerns kind of petered out. Well, around that period, it was, the student comes in, he's brash, he's bold, he's truculent. He keeps getting in a fight and getting this snot kicked out of him because he doesn't know what he's doing. He submits to the discipline, and and then he becomes better, and so forth. I forget the name of that movie, but there's another one there. It's the same type of theme, and it was pretty big that year. I think it was 84, 83, 84.
Huh. I don't remember.
Okay,
I
I
don't.
wasn't sure if you. But John
It's
Glenn,
not.
he was a bad guy in Urban Cowboy.
I don't.
I think
I've
that
never
was his
even
name.
seen that movie, Urban
You've never
Cowboy.
seen Urban Cowboy? You
No.
were probably a baby when that happened. Yeah, John Travolta. Yeah.
Oh no, yeah,
60s.
I did see that show. I did see Urban Cowboy,
Mhm.
but later. I don't really
Okay.
remember it. And if it was probably like on HBO or something like that. I can't
Yeah.
remember.
Yeah.
You know, but I do remember seeing that show, Urban Cowboy, with because that was there's a while there where people were like, "Where's John Travolta?" and suddenly he comes out with the cowboy movie. That was kind of funny. But
Dancing.
hey,
Yeah.
um, before when I was talking and I said I don't remember martial arts movies, look, I was thinking martial arts movies of that caliber. There were all kinds of martial arts movies I remember prior to that. Especially, we have to talk about the Chuck Norris craze. The Chuck Norris craze of the early 80s, and probably one of the very first shows that I ever went to go see in the theater was An Eye for an Eye by Chuck Norris. Remember that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But
Oh
again,
yeah.
it was
And that
one of
was
those
huge.
movies. It was one of those movies that the martial arts was the story was geared around the martial arts basically.
Hmm.
Like you're
Right.
watching it to see the martial arts, but I remember that he had the his hands cuffed behind his back and he beat the guy up anyway. That kind of thing. That was a great movie.
He was in
Um
Lone Wolf McQuade, 83.
Yep.
Yeah.
83,
And
Lone Wolf McQuade. That was probably one of my favorite shows growing up. Well, Lone Wolf
David
McQuade.
David Carradine was the bad guy in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did I heard that in that movie Lone Wolf McQuade, that you don't see David Carradine get beat up or lose by getting beat up. That he gets the grenade gets thrown in. I
Yeah.
heard, and I'm not sure about this. I heard that he said that he wouldn't lose in a fight on screen. That was part of the deal, that he had to die in some other way, but couldn't die through a fight. Um, now
Wouldn't
we're
surprise me.
That wouldn't surprise me. You didn't hear anything about that yet or anything? No, it wouldn't surprise me either. I heard about it. I didn't look it up for myself. That's one of those things you have to look up for yourself. Now, that's a good movie because that was one of those movies that pit two styles against each other.
Right.
You
It was like the
know,
Ali
pit.
praise for karate versus kung fu. Yeah.
Yeah. Did that influence you in any way to go into kung fu and not into Tang Soo Do or what?
No, I was already doing Wing Chun in 81. So
You were doing Wing Chun in 80. I remember now that you tell me because, I interviewed you before on another
yeah.
podcast, but I forgot about that. You were doing Wing Chun in 81, right?
I know.
Right.
I'm old. I'm so
Well, you
old.
weren't that you weren't that old. You're still Generation X. I mean,
Yes.
you're still you were doing Wing Chun by that time, huh? So
Yeah.
is your as you were so how old were you in 81 then when you
I
were
was
doing
11
so you
and
were
turned 12.
11.
Yeah.
So
I was
you were
born in
11.
69.
So I was kind of like in and out of martial arts when I was a kid watching these movies because when I was around that age, um, the closest martial arts school was in another town, and we had to drive up to go there. And I went up and got my yellow belt or something, and came back down. And we didn't do it for a while, that kind of thing. So a lot of it was self study. I wasn't like involved in being, in this dojo scene when these movies came out. Um,
Hmm.
well, when those early movies came out later, I'm kind of collapsing things down into a little bit of a time frame because I can't just talk about everything all at once. But um, did you ever watch a movie then and then go back and try something in the movie? Did you ever look at something in the movie and go, oh, okay, I'm going to try that in my because I mean, for me, I didn't have, seven, well, even 11 and 12 when I was at this town I was living in, and I didn't really have a martial arts instructor kind of in and out. For me, it was like, let's try it with friends. It's just like,
Yeah,
we're going to
I
try
must
this.
have. I don't
Yeah.
remember. I don't remember specifically doing it, but I remember. Well, I remember some training accidents. One of my favorite accidents ever was with the three sectional staff. A buddy of mine had a three sectional staff, and I'm sure we'd been watching a movie with it because nobody taught us how to use it. We went out to the field, and he had a sword, and he wanted to practice blocking. So I at full distance with this thing swung over the top, and he blocked it, and I was like, do it again. I'm like, all right, and he do it again, and then all right, I did it again, and he lost his timing, and his block went through, and it was that long staff was already in motion.
Oh, no.
It hit him right in the head.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Yeah, I think that was us probably doing something. I think the stuff we tried for movies, unfortunately, and almost tragically, was with weapons, and so somebody needed to supervise us more.
You're taking your fantasies out about vanity on these poor co-students and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so let's move a little. Well, we're all. I might even have to title this martial arts movies of the 80s, because we're not really moving to the 90s or anything like that, because the next group of martial arts movies that I want to talk about that actually highly influenced me was the ninja movies, the ninja craze. Now you were older, so did you like them, or did you look at them as this is the goofiest?
If you're listening to this podcast, I am shaking my head no vigorously. No, no, I was not a big fan of the ninja craze. I thought that was a hair metal of martial art movies. You're killing my genre, man.
That is a great way to put it. It's the hair metal of the martial art movies.
Just stop it already.
Just stop. I think Revenge of the Ninja came out in 84.
84.
So you were not a Sho Kosugi fan?
No.
Not even because I look at all the ninja movies, and I think probably the best of the ninja movies was Revenge of the Ninja, in my opinion. I don't know about the modern ninja movies like Ninja Assassin and all that stuff. There were some ninja movies that were just absolutely terrible.
Yeah. Some of them, Whew. Some of them were really bad. Yes.
Yeah, so terrible ones.
Yeah. It's like it's the band equivalent. They had a single, and then the rest of the album was utter trash. Yes.
Yes.
So I mean, there was a couple of moments that the movie, and then the rest of it was, oh my goodness, it was vomit inducing. It was bad. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, of course. Well, I mean, I look back now, like I was talking about this on the podcast when I talked about Star Wars. I mean, I really enjoyed Return of the Jedi when it came out. But I mean, now that as an older, it's my least favorite one. I don't even.
I know.
It's hard for me to even watch.
I know. It's so disappointing.
Yeah. After you get past the Jabba the Hutt scene.
Yeah, right. After that, it's all downhill because you wait all that time for Luke to finally figure out what he's doing, and he finally shows up as a master. I mean, that's a kung fu film for all intents and purposes. This is a kung fu film in space. That's what it is. And so you finally go, okay, finally he has become a master, and that's awesome. And then they did the Ewok thing. But anyway.
Yeah.
But you're sick of Luke being a doofus.
Yeah, for sure.
2 films.
But the now I look back at ninja films, and the way I look back at when I was really into Motley Crue, kind of the same way.
They came out 84, didn't it? Shout at the Devil was 83 or 84?
83.
Okay.
They came out in 81. Too Fast for Love came out in 81, and then Shout at the Devil came out in I think 83. As I recall.
I don't remember them until 83, 84.
Yeah. Well, But Revenge of the Ninja, I thought was probably the best of the classic ninja shows. I mean, I really enjoyed Revenge of the Ninja. Um, there was kind
But
of
it
a
was huge.
redeeming
Yeah.
quality of it, you
Yeah.
know. What were some of them that you hated?
Well, the the thought that ninjas had almost a superpower because constantly it was so overdone. All right, I was like, get over it. All right, I mean, just let's. Uh, it's just like what Americans do with everything. We just do. We get something. It was a good idea for the first movie, and it was like Karate Kid 3, right? So the whole ninja craze was just like, all right, fine, you guys got to move on. You have to find you something different. So it wasn't like it wasn't a good idea. It was just
Right.
yeah, it was just an idea. They should have just, all right, yeah, we need to have some restraint here and stop.
Did you know that, by the way, the Karate Kid 3, you know how they decided that they were just going to be friends in the movie? Like there was no love interest? Do you remember? So in Karate Kid 3, the girl that
Yeah,
was in the movie, they just decided to be friends.
yeah.
And
What
this
was the deal with
was,
that? Yeah.
well, this is interesting. I just learned this a little while ago. Apparently, at the time, that girl was 15 and Ralph Macchio was 28. And so to have to have a
Netflix
kissing
wouldn't mind
scene,
that now.
oh gosh. So they decided not to, not
I'm
to have a
just saying.
romantic
I'm just saying.
interest. Yeah,
Yeah.
a
you
romantic
know,
interest on that
all right.
film.
Here's something. I was actually there was a casting call for the bad guy in Karate Kid 3. They were looking for somebody, 18 to 25, whatever, 5'9" to some, with some martial arts experience or whatever. And a couple of buddies of mine wanted to go to the casting thing, see if they could get cast for Karate Kid 3. So
Okay.
I was in New York when that whole thing was going on. And so I went over with them and ended up in the building. I was everybody had these headshots. It was the only time in my life I was ever around like actors and how seriously they took this discipline. I'd never noticed it. I'm naive that way. I was only
Yeah.
18, and everybody just sitting there with their headshots and photo of themselves. And I'm like, and the guys are looking at me like, "What are you doing here?" And then somebody came up to me and said, "Can you do martial arts?" And apparently, what they did was you go in, you show them your stuff, you say something, and whoever I don't know anything about acting, so I'm sure if someone knows, they're gonna be able to follow through what happened here. But I ended up in a room and I said, well, what are you doing? And of course I like talking to people, so I'm making jokes, and I ended up in a room with somebody, and this woman said, "Can you show me some martial arts?" So I'm like, "Fine." So I got up and threw a couple punches and a kick, and she looked at me weird, and she said, "Okay, go in the next room." And I went in the next. I went through the door, and it was the alley. They sent me out of the building.
They sent you out of the. Did you
I was
think
out.
maybe? Did you think maybe you took a wrong turn somewhere?
Well, I
Did
couldn't
you
get
like?
back in. I mean, just
Uh,
leave. I mean, that's a cold world, Hollywood. And it was really funny. I'm sitting there cracking up, and then somebody else comes out. He's like, he's looking
yeah.
at me, looking at him. It was just a bunch of guys, and it was just a hilarious thing. Be there
Oh
when
gosh.
I was just hanging around with a couple of buddies of mine, that were doing, they were karate guys,
So
and they were good. And
what film was worse? Okay, what film was worse? Okay, was Karate Kid 3 worse, or was the next Karate Kid worse? Did you see the next Karate Kid or no?
I'm having trouble recollecting because it was so bad I couldn't get through it. I'm gonna have to go. The Karate Kid 3 is worse because it broke the chain. It broke it.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
I mean, anything you do after that, it's just gonna, you know, just like
Yeah, right.
Rocky 5 compared to, I mean, you completely obliterated the credibility of that franchise when you did a movie that bad. So
Right.
that's my take.
You know what would have been cool if they had in Karate Kid 3, in my opinion, is if instead of doing another tournament thing, what if they did a street fight? You know? That would have
Rocky
been
did it with
cool.
Tommy Morrison.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So
I mean, what if they would have
something
done
different.
the
Get a
street
better
fight
writer,
thing?
guys. Yeah, take time with this project. That's what was irritating with it. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna hit you with a question. Let me
Okay, go ahead.
You give me, because I'm supposed to be passive here, I'm the guest, but
No.
you give me your top 5 '80s martial art films. They don't have to be in a particular order.
80s martial arts films. Okay.
Top 5.
Oh boy. Okay, so I would definitely say The Last Dragon for sure was a big, huge influence on me. I would say Karate Kid 1 and 2 for sure. And actually I liked the second Karate Kid better. I know the first Karate Kid was a classic, but for
Mhm.
some reason I resonate with part twos for some reason. I don't know why, but I just thought the
Mhm.
going to Okinawa
Mhm.
and that exploring that was better. So Karate Kid 2, 1 and 2 would have been definitely on there. In the 80s, let's see, I would say Revenge of the Ninja for sure because I loved that show. I mean, I was all after I watched that show. I didn't watch it when it came out. I watched it after it came out, when it was on HBO or something like that. But after that, I mean, it was all things ninja. I got the gear. I had the ninja outfit. Um, I I had a friend, like we'd all kind of get stuff and then like try it out together. You know those claws,
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
claws that they used to claw. We had a pair of those. They don't work at all. They don't help you. They
Did you
just
have? Did you go into the magazine and order the Ninja Stars? Were you
we
that?
had a we did we had a store that had
Okay.
it was a pawn shop and they had stars that
Okay.
we would buy. But those things literally like you'd put them on your hand and
Mhm.
that metal strap and then the glove, that you strap in and then the claws come out, you've seen it. And then you go like this, and all it would do is just dig into your hand right there. I mean, there's no way you're pulling yourself up at all on those things. We tried it on a tree and stuff. It was
Oh my
awful.
goodness.
So what's that? One, two, three.
4. You
I
got
guess
one
that's
more.
four. Probably Best of the Best. Did Best of the Best come out in the 80s?
Yeah,
I can't.
85. I think.
Yeah, Best of the Best for sure. Best of the Best. I thought that was one of those movies that was like the movie was really good, and then the
Mm.
martial arts was great on top of that. Best of the Best would have been, yeah, I loved the Best of the Best. You get into the 90s, I'd make different
Yeah.
choices. If there's one in the 90s that I would be allowed to have, it would be Rapid Fire.
Oh,
But
okay.
what about you? If you had to choose five, let's hear your five.
Okay. I'm gonna
Yeah,
go.
let's
I'm gonna
let's make
go.
it the 80s.
All right, it's the '80s. I'm gonna give you Last Dragon. I'll
Uh-huh.
give you that one, and then I'll give you Roadhouse '89.
Oh,
Roadhouse was a martial art film.
yeah, for sure, sure,
Yeah,
sure.
so it was martial art, and Benny the Jet was huge with that. Um, then I'll take Karate Kid. Then I'll take Police Story, Jackie Chan. I think
Oh,
that changes. Of course, that's not an American film, but I think it changes the way. I mean, that really launches Jackie and his whole theme and the way you start seeing martial arts action and
uh-huh.
bringing in great martial artists. I mean, Jackie at that time becomes an industry unto himself. And after we ruined him here with the big brawl, right?
Right.
And with Robert Klaus trying to turn him into another Bruce Lee. And so I say that, and then so what I've got Last Dragon, I've got Roadhouse, I've got Karate Kid, I've got Police Story, and I think you got to put a Chuck Norris one in. I think Eye for an Eye.
Eye for an Eye,
Yeah.
definitely. That would
Well,
have.
you could put Octagon because Octagon had ninjas in it.
Yeah, I
So
love the Octagon. I love
or
the
okay,
Octagon. And that
or
guy with
Lone
the
Wolf McQuade. One,
commas,
yeah.
that guy with the commas and flipping his
Oh,
commas around and
was
stuff
wasn't
like
that
that.
wasn't that Fumio Demura? Wasn't he Miyagi's double for Pat Morita?
I don't
I
know.
think I think he was. I think he was. But so that'd
That
be
was a
my
close
five.
show.
Yeah.
Uh, thi-
And Roadhouse is
yeah,
more about the plot and the whole bit. Be that
you
as it
can
was,
barely
but
consider. I guess. I mean, I'm gonna let you in under the wire on Roadhouse there,
I
because
know, I know, I know. Throw that one in there. That's my walk code. If you give me a
I was
'90s,
not a big I was not a big Patrick Swayze fan personally. So Roadhouse, the best part I thought about Roadhouse was him getting his butt kicked.
had
So,
had it was the ultimate male testosterone. Had Sam Elliott in it,
oh
right?
yeah,
It's got
Yeah.
Kelly Lynch in the tablecloth dress, and she shows up with
Oh
the
yeah.
club in.
Yeah.
Remember that one? And
Oh yeah.
and you know, and I'm a 19-year-old guy looking at this beautiful woman, and even I was like, what is she wearing? Right? I mean, that is a terrible wardrobe choice.
Well, what about let's talk about the reboot career of Jackie Chan, because another movie that I thought was phenomenal when we start moving into the 90s really was Rumble in the Bronx.
Yeah,
I thought
I
Rumble in
was
the
going to go there.
Bronx was
I was going to tell you,
outstanding.
standing. I was going to tell you, I think Jackie's. If you give me the '90s movie, I still think Rapid Fire. I don't know where Brandon would have went down the road,
Uh-huh.
but I have to go with Jackie Chan because Jackie Chan was brave enough to go and do his thing, not be stuck in the shadow of I'm going to be the baddest dude, man. Jackie was a bad dude, but he never played. You know, he always played that comic slapstick
But,
stuff up. And Rumble in the Bronx, in every film he had, even the bad guys were generally misunderstood, and they became their allies at the end of the movie. And so a lot of fights came because of that misunderstanding. And so it was just a really great. I'm just going to sound oxymoronic, but a happy, violent environment
yeah.
where you're watching the amazing athleticism and, and ingenuity and creativity of Jackie Chan. Quick, funny story. I won't name the two very well-known kickboxers that I was hanging around with. One of them had a great kick, and the other one was a champion. Both of them were champion kickboxers. That's your hint. And one of them, his own movie career had sort of stalled. He was a bit bitter, and he had said something about Jackie Chan, that Jackie Chan wasn't a real fighter. And the other one says to him, I don't know how you define a real fighter. It was like sport fighting. And he said, I don't know about that, man. I mean, two things about Jackie. What are you going to do to him in a fight that he hasn't done to himself in his movies?
Right, right.
And
Yeah.
if you're going to fight with Jackie, you're going to fight with Jackie and everything in the room. Because just because the stuff's choreographed doesn't mean he can't pull off hitting you in the head with a chair, you know?
Right,
And
yeah.
so, you know, it's just, it was really good martial arts because though it was choreographed for comedy in a lot of cases, it was much more in tune with real martial arts, believe it or not. Because why would I be in a fight with somebody like for that situation and not try to hit you with the bookcase?
Yeah.
Right?
For
Why would
sure.
why am I trying to find out who's the better man? I mean, I always like to, when you think about what Jackie was able to show of how he used the environment, and he just did another one with Pierce Brosnan, where and what, I forget the name of that. It was a recent one,
Hmm.
3 or 4 years, and the dude is still able to.
Oh, he's still phenomenal.
Yeah,
He's a guru of mine for
yeah,
sure. I
he
mean, I
is.
really want to be as flexible as and you know and agile as he is at
Yeah,
his age.
yeah,
When I get there for sure. And he's somebody, and, you know, when you look at that, you get inspired because you're like, well,
mm,
you can do it. Then I mean,
right.
if he's still can, you know, put his leg up over his head and so you know walk a yeah. Well, I'd never be able to, you know, walk between two buildings or anything like that, or jump between two buildings.
And he
But
didn't need the ninja thing. He didn't need, because he was a ninja. Yeah, no,
yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
that's about the best realistic ninja stuff I ever saw. They had Ninja
completely.
Theater. Did you ever watch Ninja Theater or no? Did you ever see
Yeah,
that?
oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had some friends. We actually went out one night all dressed up as ninjas because we thought it was funny, and we actually almost got
Oh,
in trouble because people were like, "Well, you know, that, you know, it was late. It was a summer
I
night. We had too much
did.
time on our hands."
I did get in trouble. I did get in trouble one time.
You
I
did.
dressed
What?
as a ninja. I'm not kidding. I was probably 12 years old and I dressed up as a ninja and I was running around my neighborhood and I was on the roof of I was on the roof of a mortuary and that was at the house, excuse
Just
me,
plot
just cuz
thickens.
just trying to climb and somebody saw me and I you know
At least you went to the right place in case you have an accident.
whatever. But I somebody called the police, and the police uh, uh, the police showed up. I am not kidding. I don't. My mom's
Goodness.
gonna listen to. I don't. My mom's gonna
Yes.
listen to this, and I am not sure. This was a block away from my home. Okay, this is a block away from my home by the time the police showed up because I was realizing, oh crap, because next thing you know, people are sticking their head out the windows and looking at all this stuff. I don't even know if my mom knows this story, because, and she's going to be listening to this because she's, listens to all my podcasts. So sorry, Mom, for letting you know this. But
Your boy is a criminal.
the police showed up,
Mm-hmm.
and of course I'm in a black suit. At 12, you don't know how old the person is. I was not short for my age. I wasn't tall for my age either. They showed up and pulled guns. They showed up and pulled guns because they were not. This is, there is no. We were in a small town. It was, I mean, there wasn't.
I'm going to refrain from making a political joke right now.
There wasn't any threat of the ACLU or anything like that. They pulled guns. I said, "Hey, I'm a kid." They took my mask. They threw me against the car. I took my mask off. When they realized I was just a kid, they just let me walk home. They're like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, I wasn't like breaking in. I wasn't breaking any, I wasn't breaking any laws really. I mean, other than being on a roof.
And looking like a burglar.
It looked bad, but I wasn't doing anything wrong. And they let me walk home. This was a block away from my house. I went home, and I don't know when. I think I may have just sat on the couch and relaxed.
I wasn't doing anything wrong. What time was it?
Well, no, it was daytime.
Oh,
so,
okay.
So okay. I wasn't in the middle of the night or anything like that. I was embarrassed because all the neighbors up the street were all out looking at what's going on down the street with the cops. And I can't believe it. It was a little nutty, and I don't really know how many. I don't really think I've even shared that story with anybody.
So this is your great confession. Do you feel better? Do you feel it's off your chest?
I guess so.
I have a new career. I'm gonna be on podcast and get people to admit their deepest, darkest sins.
Right. I think that I mean, I don't even know how close that I came to getting shot. Who knows? Because you got a guy in a black suit, and I think I had my wooden sword with me. So I you know what I mean? And you can't tell that sword's not real because it's black. It's a black. You don't know. And I think I could have gotten shot. I really do.
And we would have deprived the world of this podcast. That's what would have happened. There would have been